Love is a complex emotion, a series of thoughts, moments, and meaningful actions. What we forget is that love is not just a sophisticated emotion. It is a series of intricate signals intertwined with our brain chemistry. What you might not know is that love is largely the result of your neurotransmitters playing a game of tennis with dopamine and serotonin, in hand with hormones like oxytocin. In other words, these chemicals we associate with the feelings of joy and comfort prove that the brain is just as involved with human connection as the heart. In an age where we are more digitally connected than ever, there has never been such a powerful epidemic of loneliness. Groundbreaking scientific research is leaning towards psychedelics to remedy this problem. So, could psychedelics, namely MDMA and psilocybin, be the key to reforming human connection? What psychedelics offer human connection is not too difficult to grasp. Typically associated with rave culture, MDMA has a much softer and more subtle edge that's being praised by the scientific community all over the West for the first time since they were banned under Schedule I in 1985. When it's ingested, MDMA umpires the release of neurotransmitters like serotonin, which promotes enhanced social and emotional interactions. MDMA also interacts with oxytocin, lovingly dubbed the love hormone. It's so easy to remove yourself from these chemicals. Forget that they are actually fluctuating and regulating within yourself right now, not just long and complex scientific words. But that's what I'm here to remind you. Oxytocin is pivotal in bonding, trust, and that feeling of social closeness and acceptance. Have you ever considered what it would be like to have an amplified sense of empathy and understanding within your couple? Imagine going to therapy and not only being verbally understood, but literally being felt and experienced emotionally by your partner. The potential these drugs have are endless and almost inconceivable to the version of connection that we understand now. It could pave the way to true understanding of others. Though the drug itself, MDMA, only lasts a few hours, the challenges you could overcome and the habits you could rewire are timeless. I read a Times article about a couple. Let's call them Joe and Mary. Well, when Joe and Mary tried MDMA for the first time, they expected to just break free for the night and have a little bit of fun. But in reality, they sat down together and they talked about trash. Yes, I literally mean trash. They sat and discussed why Joe, for some reason, could never take out the trash when he said he was going to. They discussed why that bothered his wife and what they were going to do about it going forward. Following on from that, Joe and Mary now, a few times a year, pack the kids off to the grandparents, take the night off, and spend the night in a top-rated luxury hotel room, taking the drugs and talking about the most grueling issues from their decade-long relationship, ranging from sex to chores. What's being uncovered here is that Joe and Mary were able to reach new understandings within their relationship and listen to each other in ways they'd never been able to before this experience. In essence, Joe and Mary have been doing a DIY version of the next breakthrough in mental health treatment, MDMA-assisted couples counseling, which not too far in the future may be available at your local therapist's office. An assistant professor of psychiatry and behavioral science at Johns Hopkins Medicine, who studies psychedelics, Albert Garcia Romeo, says, there's a lot of neurobiological reasons to think that this drug would be helpful for couples therapy. He explains that while simultaneously activating some of those happy transmitters we discussed, it also quiets the parts of the brain that respond to threat, sort of like turning down the volume on a radio, lowering the amplitude. Current research on MDMA's relationship with couples therapy is limited. However, it has a long and deep history of being used for this purpose. Some therapists legally used MDMA in couples therapy in the 1970s and 80s. In a study that one doctor did, George Greer, he found that 21 of the 29 people he studied experienced more closeness and/or enhanced communication, and 2 found it easier to receive compliments and criticism. While MDMA is still in the process of being approved as a medical treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, it is currently still illegal in many parts of the world, which does serve as a roadblock to its potential as a therapeutic agent. However, another prominent psychedelic, psilocybin, which is the active ingredient in magic mushrooms, is legal in several parts of the world, such as the Netherlands, in the form of truffles. Similarly to MDMA, psilocybin has a similar effect on the enhancement of intimacy. MDMA will also have to break down these legal barriers, and is very much actively in the process of doing so. However, it is important to note that there are some potential harms to using psychedelics, even in safe, medically approved and regulated environments. These harms can range from physical impacts to psychological ones. MDMA can occasionally cause overheating, straining of the heart, and severe dehydration. Also, it can interact lethally with some medications. Psilocybin, on the other hand, has more of a psychological impact. This can include intense anxiety, paranoia, and ego dissolution. It is important to note that these psychological impacts rarely happen within controlled environments, but when they happen outside of it, it does escalate dramatically. This is why, despite the process of legalization for some psychedelics, regulated safety protocols are essential. So, let's confront the other elephant in the room, the ethical dilemmas. Even in an ideal world where MDMA and psilocybin are accessible within controlled therapeutic environments, our budding relationship with them as a society does pose profound questions. How do therapists ensure ongoing consent when emotions, traumas, and memories appear unpredictably? Following on from that, could someone's self-declared authentic emotional expression under the influence of these substances be misread, or in some cases, not really how they feel? And lastly, who gets to define safe use? Access must be equitable. It cannot serve the wealthy disproportionately to those who are not. This is a powerful tool which can revolutionize one's understanding of oneself and must be accessible to all equally, or we risk commodifying intimacy. I've thought particularly about the problem of ongoing consent in therapeutic use. Based on current protocols in couples counseling, I think that the most feasible solution comes from predetermined pause protocols, where the patient and therapist develop body language signals or verbal cues indicating that the environment needs to be adapted, the session needs to be ended, or that the session needs to be paused. I also do think it'd be quite well received if the patient pre-records reassuring audio prompts for themselves before using the substances. This could help leverage self-trust over therapist direction when played in the sessions and help ease any experienced discomfort. To help make the use of psychedelics equitable, there could be a world where MDMA and psilocybin become covered by private insurance or the NHS, like some other medications. Similarly, there could be a form of mandated tiered pricing levels varying between wealth brackets for use. At this time, I do think these are the most practical and efficient solutions. But as legislation is passed and the frameworks of psychedelic use develop within the public, I imagine that the innovation behind safeguarding will continuously flourish. Unfortunately, I do not have the answer to all of these questions right now, but I think it is of all importance that we as a society keep these in the front of our minds as we begin to utilize these eye-opening substances for all of their benefits. I want to wrap up by talking to you all about the future, where this could go. All of this suggests a fundamental shift into a more holistic and experimental approach of therapy, one that leverages psychedelics to better understand emotion and connection as concepts within interpersonal relationships. Even more than that, we could potentially be seeing a future where psychedelics are being used just as commonly as, for example, SSRIs to treat non-treatable and chronic forms of depression. The potential is endless. We just have to make sure that we create it in a fair and ethical way. So let me leave you with this. If you're feeling at a crossroads with your relationship or at a barrier with understanding your own emotions and intimacy, think about how the future of couples therapy might lie at the crossroads between neuroscience and psychedelic use. Because it's not just about fixing what's broken. It's about exploring new dimensions of love and intimacy, love and connection that we might not even know exist.